Thanks. Actually, this is after Pitcher Kucha in Bangalore, the second time I have the opportunity to have this more kind of visual presentation, which very much fits the focus I want to bring into to this round. Because like in Bangalore at the Pitcher Kucha, I talked about, can you see globalization? And what does it mean, like these abstract big terms, globalization? You could also apply that to change. What does it mean to see change? And what are the preconditions in the visual realm for that? So when Remco was showing the slide about transformation and giving this image of the butterfly, this is kind of what I also want to talk about in terms of alternatives to speech, text, and action in conceptualizing change, not only in the results, but also in the preconditions. So visuality for me addresses something beyond the image and beyond the question which is so important also for activism, which is visibility. How can you make yourself visible? So visuality is the first concept I would bring in here, and it's going back to different thinkers. One is Nicholas Murtzev, saying this is like the condition of contemporary culture, is very much one of individuality, and it links up to this older discussion of the 70s from Telkel and others about intertextuality. And this is addressing, I think, an ecosphere which you can here see with Occupy, where you have different visual codes being present at the same time, also different modes of visuality. And they're in conflict, but they also form like integrated environments where you can have visual contestations actually and visual negotiations happening. Counterfigurations is a second term I think a lot about now. This is an image about one of the instigating actions of the Egypt revolution in Alexandria, when there was the question, how can you in an atmosphere of repression actually express kind of political activity? And it was about the murder on Khaled Said and the torture. And what activists did is, in this atmosphere, they created these social images, what I would call social images. They just wore black dresses and looked out onto the sea and were not saying anything. And it was not covered by the law, so it was not illegal. And it was very visible, and everybody understood the image. So the figuration was kind of an expression of a political statement. And it, of course, also inscribed into a certain environment of visibility, which is the urban space kind of being contested. You're not being allowed to assemble a visible crowd otherwise, because then it's a political demonstration. So I think these figurations are also kind of infrastructure of how groups organize themselves and how they form kind of seed images of what their political movement is about. Augmented visospheres is actually about two concepts which I integrated here. One is one thing we discussed a lot about on Video Vortex, which is the augmented now and here, which is brought about by communication media and visual media in particular. So being at a demonstration, you're already kind of recording for people out there on other places. You're already connected to other times and spaces at the same time. You read maybe messages about simultaneous events somewhere else. So the here and now of a political action now is a very much distributed thing, and that's very much to the mediated ecosphere. And the concept of the spherical is for me also important, because you still, even in these network conditions, you have forms of integration of the sensual. Like you still have one activity in one time and place, and the sphere actually is kind of an image for this kind of integration, which works on the background of a networked infrastructure, but kind of is more sensual and integrative in forming kind of an senseful event. This is one of those senseful events. That's a screening by Moserin on the Tahrir Place. And so the fourth term is projection and also mirror, social mirror, I would say. Projection is a very old concept, but I think it's still very valid, and it has been revalidated by these kinds of events where people kind of assemble in a collective way their social imaginations. And I think change always is dependent on kind of the vision you attach to it, even if that itself changes during the event. And these kinds of projections, what they actually provide is kind of a collective vision within these social and political activities, and kind of an outward projection of what you share, and also the experience of the movement itself, how it sees itself. Like here they've shown the events of the day, the handy videos of repressions, of street barricade battles and things. And this has been, as people from Musirin were telling us, very strong emotional, transformative experience to share these visions in these kind of collective projections. The last one, actually, I was very thankful for the, I already mentioned that, for the presentation of crowd voice, because this is actually what I want to address with the last concept of vision maps. Frederick Jameson says, like, linking back to this question of hypermodernity and postmodernity, that the postmodern is a time where individual experience and the here and now of the individual is not congruent with the realities of globalization. So you need forms to map yourself into this global whole and into these global contradictions and processes. And I think mapping actually is a very important concept for that, because on the one hand it goes away from the text to the visual, but it also is about kind of creating shared maps and overviews for groups, even temporary groups, of where are we now? Like, what is our environment? What do we share? What are our common infrastructures? And this is an image of the Labs to Lab meeting in Quito, where I've been present, a Latin American network. And what they did was very nice, because it's also very analog. So mapping is not about like just using the newest digital technologies, but they've put out these threads on a big place, and everybody could pin up his ideas, and they created this collective map, and then they created kind of a social image of what they want to achieve and where they position themselves, what the issues are. And I think these kinds of mappings are also important, because they are the more continual form of conceptualizing what you are part of, where you're positioned, what you want to achieve, and they span different singular events, because they form really like the mental map of what everyone as an individual and what the group wants to do. Okay.